synergies between building and developing in Australia compared to South Africa? Is there some similar?
Similar metrics. I think the biggest difference there, certainly in construction, is the amount of labour, cheap labour you have. It's very heavily labour rather than using equipment and mechanics on buildings. Health and safety not as good, not as prevalent, although it's improved the last couple of years. We did a project, a 5-story project without a crane in South Africa because you had the labour and it was cheaper.
Shayne, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Very good, nice to have you. We've known you for a while now, so it's good to have you on and get you in on the show. So before we deep dive into things today, can you start by telling us a bit about your background and, more importantly, I guess, how did you get to where you are today?
Sure. I mean, it's been in my blood and my family for 2 generations now. My father was a builder developer back in South Africa, and so as a youngster growing up, that was what we did. Back then there was no health and safety in South Africa, so as a kid in school holidays I used to work on the building site. So that gave me that passion to get into building first and then into development. Went and studied studied quantity surveying for my sins. I don't know why I did that, but we did. Found that incredibly boring in the professional office, and then got into construction pretty quickly, which really set a good baseline for me moving into development. As I mentioned, my dad was also builder developer, so really got used to his developments and the way he went about things. And so naturally for me, it was a progression into developments and development management, working for resort developments, land developments and apartment developments back in South Africa. And then at a stage, we decided to immigrate to Australia. Unfortunately, I had an Australian passport as my dad was born in Perth, so natural way in, and started off in a building company and then naturally got back into apartment development. So been in Perth for about 13 years, and moving into Perth was straight into apartment development from there. Gained a lot of experience over the last 12 years and so progressed through the ranks into where I am at the moment.
So does that mean your father's Australian?
Yeah, he was born here. My grandfather was born here. During the war, bit of a story, but during the war, his fleet of Navy went up the African coast, met my grandmother during the war. He was South African, came back here, got married, had 2 boys, my dad, my uncle. And I think they got to about 2 or 3 years old and decided we're heading to South Africa. My grandmother must have got homesick. And so I, just from that, got the passport at the age of 16, and so decided to come and grace you with my presence.
There you go. It wouldn't be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably wouldn't find many people moving to Australia and back to South Africa. It's normally the one way.
Yeah. Normally it's the other way around. It's been interesting because there's obviously family here that I didn't know I had in Australia through my grandfather. So it's been good.
And just quickly, the synergies between building and developing in Australia compared to South Africa, is there's some similar?
Similar metrics, like you gauge the developments on a similar metrics. I think the biggest difference there, certainly in construction, is the amount of labour, cheap labour you have. So it's very heavily labour rather than using equipment and mechanics on buildings. So health and safety not as good and not as prevalent, although it's improved the last couple of years. So I think that's the sort of the difference. But the general metrics of development is identical.
I was going to say, in my mind, it went to, instead of using cranes, using pulley systems.
Yeah, well, I mean, they did. I mean, they used wheelbarrows instead of bloody hoist and all sorts of funny things. So we did a project, a 5-story project without a crane in South Africa because you had the labour and it was cheaper.
And they challenged you to do that to save demand.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly the same.
Yeah, okay. And one thing you speak about, long-term quality, what does that mean to you when you're leading a development project?
So long-term quality is key for us because it leaves the legacy, and that's your brand for the next project. So you've got to make sure that there is that long-term quality through design, through material selection, through the way you build it, the workmanship. All of that is really important for long-term quality. At the end of the day, as I say, our brand is everything, and if we don't get the sales,
your last job.
Yeah, exactly. And if we don't get the sales because we've got a bit bad brand awareness, then it doesn't help us. We'll fall flat quick.
And for you as well, being in high volume or, larger projects, it's, one shit product and you've got 800 disappointed clients.
That's right.
All together.
Yeah.
Magnified, quite extensively.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I dare say probably the upside to that as well is you've got 800 people, however many people showcasing a great product.
Yeah,
when they have people over and they go, the wow factor and all that sort of stuff. So
that's exactly it. And I think what's important for us with quality and long-term quality, the benefit we have now is that we're building it ourselves. So we've got better control over the quality that we're producing because we're all in it together now. So it's a lot better.
So instead of kicking the builder, you've got to kick yourselves.
Yeah, exactly. You're in it together. There's, collaboration there, and the end results you've got to all be proud of. So
that's good. And how do you approach, in today's market, building, balancing building with budget and making, something you're proud of? Obviously, everything, as you know, is I guess more so today is budget driven. You're trying to get a quality outcome, but we've seen it time and time again, and not so much in construction, but everyone wants a great product, but not everyone's prepared to pay for that product.
Yeah.
So then you build a cheap product, and everyone complains that it's cheap and nasty.
Yeah.
It's is that a fine sort of line that you find that you're always dancing with?
Yeah, it is. It's a real challenge, and it's an ongoing challenge on every project of ours from the start. You know what you need to do, and you know what you need to design, you know what you need to specify. But the challenges in the industry at the moment with construction costs the way they are and ever increasing and unstable really puts a challenge on it. So it's not just you design it and you cost it and you hope that that's what you're going to end up with. It's an ongoing evolution of trying to find ways to save money, but not to cut the quality, the aesthetics of the building and the specification, the materials that are so important. There's a number of people out there, obviously, in the industry that do that and cut it to the bone, and just it becomes a poor outcome at the end of the day. So it's a challenge, but it also comes from experience. You know what's worked before on the last projects, and you're trying to improve that a little bit more to make sure you maintain that quality.
And what's the most important thing from a project team can do to make sure that the final product still looks good and works great in 10 years? And you've obviously, just from what you said previously, you've obviously taken that. You've taken certain control over that, so you can probably better manage it.
Yeah.
Which is obviously I guess I would imagine a stem from a pain point.
Yeah.
Previously.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we run lessons learned at the end of every project. So we have the builders, the designers, the development team, the finance team, the marketing team, and we run through lessons learned. What did we do well and what we didn't do well on the last project, and try and improve it for the next one. So it's an ever-evolving discipline that we put there. Again, I think it's a collaboration thing. It's really important to make sure that you're working well with your builder and your designers together, because if you don't have that collaboration and everyone's involved and buying into it, you're just not going to get a good outcome at the end of the day, no matter how hard you try.
And one thing I loved, and it was something you said to me probably many years ago, and you said it sort of in a passing conversation, but it really stuck with me. Was I remember it was a Friday, and it was out of the pool, and I said, what's on the cards today, Shayne? And you said we're doing 10 handovers, and I thought to have someone that's in the would being up at that higher level, but you are there personally handing over to that client, so you get that first impression, or whether they've got that, wow, this looks amazing, or this is not what we thought we were going to get.
For sure. For us, it's important, no matter what level you are in the business, it's important to have that touch point with the buyers. At the end of the day, they drive your business, so you got to make sure that you're across it. So I deal with queries all the time, even at my level. And whilst we've got a great development management team, the buyers expect the seniors to be around and to be answerable for different things. So whether it's an inspection or whether it's a question and answer evening, I make sure that I'm present and deal with the buyers hand to hand. It's really important. Although, like I say, we've got a great team underneath that. They really respect your input when you come through as a senior person there. So it helps a lot.
Yeah, and not hiding behind the corporate tree and
no.
And that's all people want to get to the bottom of it, want to be felt heard, and I'm sure that's a challenging thing at the best of times. So at Edge, where you are now, you bring together architecture, construction and developments. How does that affect the way you do things as far as from that buildability, like it's all in one, all under the one umbrella, so you've got that control. And the old saying goes is, what you don't measure, you can't manage. And it seems to me that you've taken that on board and said, you know what, we'll manage this and we'll...
For sure. I mean, I think because it's relatively in-house, obviously Hillam Architects is a design company that sits just out as like a sister company, but essentially it's an in-house function, so building, developing, design. And I think the critical part, as you know, Russell, in the beginning of the project, that design initially is the most important part of it. So if we can get intel between the designers and builders and our finance team to make sure we're getting the right outcomes, it sets the whole project up really, really well. So that benefit, and there's no hidden agendas. You know that what the builder is telling you is really the single source of truth, and the designer, what they're telling you is a single source of truth. So you bring that all together, it produces a really good formula for the projects moving forward.
Yeah, and that collaboration is important. We find that being in the hydraulic design space, if we get presented something that's already 50% or 60% documented, and you try and put the design spin into it and go, well, this doesn't really work.
Yeah,
sometimes it's too far down the track to go, well, we've come this far, like we can't go back and even for example, if there's pre-sales and people have locked into contracts, it's like we can't change tapware. We can't.
That's right.
Like we told them the bedroom spaces are going to be this big. We can't. You want to put a plumbing pipe there? Well, I can't.
Yeah.
That's in someone's wardrobe, or you can't put a hot water unit there because that's or an air conditioner on the balcony. It's like that wasn't in the sales brief. Like,
exactly.
We're too far down the line. But what you're saying is, which is a great thing, is you get in early and make sure everyone's comfortable. This is the way we're going to go, and collectively go from there.
Correct, because for us, time is money. So we need to make sure that we get it right up front. And yes, there's always challenges along the way you got to deal with. But if we can get it right up front, it just minimizes that chance of delay through the project, which is really, really important for us.
So what are some of the major benefits and challenges of those of these different sides of the business working together in the same environment? And there's obviously, to me, it sounds like you've taken on, there's no way of delegating some of that risk. That's all now in-house, which
Correct.
is, in one side, that's if you can do it well, that's going to work out beautifully. If you get it wrong, there's nowhere else to shift the blame. It's
correct. No, that's exactly right. Although we've got arm's length contracts, so standard industry contracts between design and us and the builder. So there is a contractual mechanism, but we obviously make sure that we work together to eliminate that sort of risk as much as we can. Because at the end of the day, you have joint shareholders for all three businesses, and it's going to cost someone at the end of the day. So it's still a risk, and that's why that front end side of it is so important for us, to try and mitigate as much risk as you can through the process. But I think the benefits that we've seen so far outweigh the risks that potentially come through down the line.
And it would only be, something like that, it only takes, maybe using pro build as an example. If they were halfway through one of your projects or something like that, and that to you, that is the ultimate risk. You've got parameters in there that you need to deliver a product by, you've signed people up to, and then all of a sudden this has happened. Well, it's like, well, that's not our problem.
Yeah,
that's your problem. That's your new problem.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden you're scrambling to find someone to finish someone else's building off, and that, you've certainly de-risk it, but there's also some other risks that build in there.
100%. There's always going to be challenges, and I think what we do is we make sure we not over-resource, but we have substantial resource in the developments team that we can verify and double-check and make sure the details in there, the alpha details, so important that we don't get it wrong, and then at least it gives our construction team enough to get on and get it built properly.
And I'd imagine that model, correct me if I'm wrong, is not for everyone.
Yeah.
And what could other developers learn from the way you do things? To me, I don't think there's anyone else out in the market that is doing a full turnkey, 100% in-house product like you guys do. I wouldn't have thought, to some, the risk is too high.
Yeah.
They'd like to delegate some of that and not take all that risk on.
Yeah.
You guys, balls to the wall. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I love it. Like I said, it's not for everyone. So that's obviously a model that you've taken and sort of, I guess it's, when your back's against the wall, it's like, well, no one else to blame here. It's only ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you go back a couple of years ago, in the industry, it was common knowledge that the builders were battling. There was lack of skilled labour. there's a whole lot of things that stacked up that we weren't going to get our projects moving. So it was almost no choice. And what was the clincher for us a couple of years ago was our funders, our financiers who backed the business, actually came and said to us, guys, if you want to get these projects off the ground, do what we do in Sydney and build it yourselves, and we'll back you for it, which I think gave the directors that sense of comfort that, we're heading down the right road and we're going to push on. But it's not easy to get it set up, and we were fortunate enough to get a really good general manager in there, and he's recruited really well. So he's built up a fantastic team in there, and they've gone from strength to strength. They've really evolved. I mean, that's our building company now is probably the biggest WA residential builder at the moment by a long shot.
And I know, probably going back to the Pindan days, if you will, there was a lot of builders, and not so much Pindan predominantly, but there was a lot of builders going, if the contractor was working on a big, large-scale project for a builder that was on edge or, sort of not as stable as what everyone sort of thought, and it was, weren't getting paid on time, and whatever happens as, builders are starting to go, everything's getting a bit tight, it would then affect the subcontractor.
Yeah.
So if they're not getting paid because they're on another job, they're also on one of your jobs.
Correct.
And it's like, well, hang on a minute, they're being squeezed over here, so they go to the wall.
Yeah.
Just because that other builder's fallen over,
Yeah.
can't pay their debts, that wipes out the subcontractor who's
Correct.
also working on your job. So that in its sense has got its own troubles to go, well, there's nothing to do with you, but someone else is going to, send that contractor to the wall, who's also on our job, that's going to affect us. So it is, there's a lot of moving parts.
There is, and I think you touched on the subcontractors. That's a really key thing. We, because we were in-house, we obviously run through the trade letting and the trade tendering, so we get visibility of who the subcontractors are in the market and what the spread of those subcontractors look like through the tender process. So we become very selective about who we bring on board as a subcontractor. It's not just who's the lowest. So we really look at the relationship that we've built. Are they financially sound, etc. So it really builds that base really well to perform.
And so you're predominantly in the apartment space. Is that somewhere you see, WA embracing that style of living?
Yeah, I think so. I think WA has been way behind the rest of the country in terms of apartment living. And I think we're at a stage where, we talk about that urban sprawl. I think we're at the limits of urban sprawl, and we need to get that high density infill going. So I definitely think that the more educated the general public is around apartment living, the more demand there is. And we can see it already. There's just massive amounts of demand and good suburbs close to the city already. So, we think, we're not being biased because we're apartment developers, but it's a very strong industry for years to come.
Yeah, and for me, like, I look at that and I go, to me, it'd be like almost three reasons why it would support apartment building. Just recently, as we record this in late October, is the median house price in Perth is approaching $1 million, which has escalated quite quickly. Yeah. So the cost of the Australian dream, if you will, on a quarter acre, no longer becomes viable or affordable.
Yeah.
You've also then got, so that would push people into smaller, cost-effective properties, apartments, if you will. Also, you've got downsizers, an ageing demographic, which I don't think's just WA, that's Australia-wide.
Yeah.
The baby boomers, God bless them. And then, so you got them moving, wanting to downsize. And I think, with Edge, you are in those suburbs that you're trying to get those people out, and with the product you're moving. Yeah. And I can't remember what the third one was, but I'm sure it was worthy of mentioning. But it just everything leads to that condensed living.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our biggest demographic that as our core buyer is the downsizer market. So if you look at the way we locate our sites, it's all in those affluent areas where those buyers all have big homes, 5-6 bedroom homes that they now have appreciated, obviously, over the last couple of years, and have spare cash if they sell it and buy an apartment that's in their area. So it's just been a huge demand on all our product because it's a quality product. The apartment's a little bit bigger, so that poor downsizer that's had that big house doesn't feel too constrained when they move in. They've got all the amenities there as well.
And that was my third one. It was a good segue into that. The third one was the people that are sitting on round figures, call it a $5 million property.
Yeah.
You can't rent out the garage or the spare bedroom to generate your income in retirement. You sell an old worn out house that's been around for 50 years and you've lived in, you brought your family up in. You don't need the space. It's old and run down, assuming, competitive to an apartment. And you've got a brand new apartment.
Yeah.
You've got, security. You've got everything new and a small with, everything you need.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know, to me, it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, feedback from the buyers that come through that haven't been in an apartment before go, oh, look, we've been really nervous about it, but it's been the best thing we've done. We don't have to worry about maintaining the back garden. We've got all these amenities that are looked after for us. And in fact, we've got more space because we've got all these private dining areas and we've got our own gym and we've got these big pools.
Wine
cellars, and you're right, security for them is a big thing as well. So added security for them, and it becomes a sense of community as well for them. I think the older they get, the more lonely they get, and they just build a sense of community within the development, which is brilliant.
Yeah, and what would it take in policy and culture to really unlock apartment living as a mainstream option in Perth? Is that would you say that's just breaking that stigma of everyone needs a Hills hoist out the back and a Holden out the front?
I think it's also education of the broader communities in those suburbs that we're not big bad developers and we're actually producing some good quality outcomes. I think state government are starting to turn a little bit, although they steer the ship a little bit slowly at times. They are coming around to the fact that they need to be a little more lenient when it comes to getting those approvals through and making sure it's efficient. But I think it's an evolving education process with these guys. It's heading in the right direction at the moment.
Yeah. And I think that's the local government we see, depending on between each government, the state government, obviously you've got JDAP in there that can move a few mountains if they need to, but, you can see, you probably deal with it and know certain governments are probably pro-development and some are less pro-development.
Yeah.
But I think that's, the reality is I think that's changing.
It is, but you've still got the local governments and the city councils that buckle to pressure from the communities. They obviously want to be seen that they're supporting their communities, and so they taint that image of development and not always pro-development, although there are a couple of councils that are pro-development. But that's why we turn to the JDAP and state government to make sure that we get our projects approved. I mean, they're good quality. It's what's on demand in the suburbs and it's what's needed. So I think the local council's still got a little bit of way to go generally.
Yeah, and I think as well, the key to it as well, there's, in these built-up areas that you're developing in, there's strong amenities there. They've got everything they need. They're close to the river. They're close to the shopping centres nearby. And I know, and you probably know better than anyone that that everyone's like, we don't want that development here, and then there's a small IGA or there's something else that goes in and they're loving it.
Yeah,
they can't see it at the time because there's concrete trucks and road closures and all that sort of stuff, and they're like, oh, this is writing into the council, noise complaints, and making it as difficult as they can, only to then go, actually, this doesn't look too bad. They drive past and they go, oh, there's a brand new shop here, and it's close. And before that, we had to go to some dodgy old supermarket down the road, and so I think that's it's a step in the right direction.
It is. It's quite interesting that when you go to a JDAP meeting and you have a bunch of protesters. Well, not protesters, but a lot of people that don't want the development to go ahead. When you look at those people and you come back to who's bought, it's some familiar faces there that were protesting against it, but all of a sudden coming around and saying, look, I think we want to buy one of these when they walk through the finished product. So again, it's a bit of an education piece, and I think the more apartments that come up in these infill areas, the more that people understand them, and it's got to be successful from there.
Is it true that you charge people more if they're seen at the protest?
We should actually. We really should.
Face recognition.
Yeah, face recognition. That would be good
as they come through the buyers.
Yeah.
No, Shayne, it's been a pleasure to take some time out of your day. I know you're a busy man, so it's been a pleasure to have you on to catch up and have a chat and talk things property and development in Perth. And We're looking forward to seeing some of your products coming to the market. What's the next one that's coming to will be finished?
Yeah, so we've just finished our Broadway project, which is 21 apartments down in Netherlands on the river. Clayton's.
Fully sold?
We got 3 left. It's in the sort of the peak of the market, so they're very high-end, top-of-the-range sort of apartments.
Typical Edge product, I believe.
Yeah, to a certain extent. But we do think there's value for money in our developments, which is important. I think the next one coming up is Clayton's in Mandari, right on the Marina Wall there, which is pretty incredible. That finishes in January. But really good quality outcomes. First 2 projects that we built ourselves.
Yeah.
So it was really, everyone's looking over the fence to see how it all comes out and did it work.
They might be looking over the fence with notepads, taking notes on how to do it.
100% there will be, yeah, for sure. But yeah, look, thanks for having me. It's been great to come down here and talk to you, Russ.